prospects. There's something that the Pittsburgh Penguins have never had a lot of ever since I've been a fan. I became a fan of the Penguins in 2008, and they've always been contending for the most part. And as a result of that, players, prospects, draft picks have been traded away. And as a result, there's been 3 Stanley Cups in my lifetime, which is amazing. But when it comes to looking at who could potentially, make an impact on the lineup for the Penguins, it's a lot harder. Because the Penguins don't have a lot of prospects, and they haven't for a long time. Now, Jim Rutherford is no longer the general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's one of the most trade-happy general managers I've ever seen. He probably is the most trade-happy general manager in NHL history. While he did amazing things with the Penguins, he's really damaged us in terms of our prospect pool. Ron Hextall is our general manager right now, and hopefully, he can rebuild through the draft and get some good, youth injected into the Penguin system. But still, as of right now, the Penguins are very weak in terms of their prospect pools. So today we are going to be doing the second edition, at least on my channel, of the Pittsburgh Penguins Prospect Pyramid. And I absolutely love the alliteration in that. So for those of you that don't know what a prospect pyramid is, it's pretty much a tier list. And the reason that it's a pyramid is because the top, is smaller. You don't have a lot of grade A prospects. They don't grow on trees. And at the bottom is your everyday run-of-the-mill 7th round draft pick and prospects. And as you slowly move up, you get to the better prospects. You get the deal. I did one of these last year, and let's actually look at that last year to see who made it in the NHL, who graduated, or who is still going to be on this list. So last year, I didn't have anyone in Tier 1 or Tier 2 because the Penguins don't have elite-level prospects. And even in Tier 2, which, I feel like the perfect name to describe what a Tier 2 player is, at least to me, was Cole Caufield. I used this in my example last year. Cole Caufield is not the next McDavid or Matthews, which would be a Tier 1 player. Cole Caufield would be that next tier, at least in my opinion, and the Penguins don't have that. Samuel Poulin, Nathan Legare, they are not that. They're not elite goal scorers that are ready to make an NHL impact. They're not that. So that's where they fall into Tier 3. And in blue are players that will still be on this list and did not make it to the NHL. Players in black have made an NHL appearance, and they made it last season. And that's Pierre Olivier Joseph in Tier 3. Drew O'Connor, same thing. I'm going to keep him on the tier list, but he did play in the NHL. And then in Tier 5, I had Josh Maniscalco, Sam Miletic, Jean Drozg, Emil Larmy, Anthony Angello, and Radim Zohorna, believe it or not. So out of those names, again, I am keeping O'Connor and Joseph in this because I think they're young enough and they, can still consider themselves prospects. Zohorna and Angello are like 24, 25, and Zohorna is likely going to be hopefully a regular or at least a fringe player. So I consider him and Angello in the same vein as like Sam Lafferty now. So I'm considering them graduates. And then Emil Larmy, who made it to the NHL, he played as a backup in one game for the Penguins when they had like Casey DeSmith went down or something like that. And he has moved overseas and he's going back to play. All right, and welcome to this year's Prospect Pyramid. Not a lot has changed in terms of the first 3 tiers. I'm just going to come out and say that, again, the Penguins have traded a lot of their picks and prospects. So I don't see any picks garnering, in the Tier 1s or Tier 2, and I put LOL in Tier 1 and still traded in Tier 2. However, Samuel Poulin and Nathan Legare are still in Tier 3, along with Pierre Olivier Joseph, and Tristan Broz is now in that tier as well. So the Penguins, slowly but surely getting better with this prospect pool. Maybe by 2028, I'll have, someone in Category 2. But in all seriousness, Poulin and Legare are the Penguins' 2 biggest prospects. If you don't count Pierre Olivier Joseph, I think Pierre Olivier Joseph will be a regular in the NHL this year. I think that's a safe bet. However, the biggest thing that is plaguing him right now is the fact that you can only have 6 defensemen on a team unless you want to play 7th defenseman. But anyways, Marcus Pettersson and Mike Matheson are kind of, taking up those spots. The Penguins do have an extra spot that was, left open by Cody Ceci. Who's going to fill that will be Mark Friedman, Chad Ruedel, or Pierre Olivier Joseph. Do you trust Pierre Olivier Joseph and John Marino as a deep pairing? I don't know. But Dumoulin Latang is really like the only thing that's confirmed with the Penguins defense right now. Yes, you have like Matheson and Pettersson, Marino that'll definitely be NHL players, but it's all where are you going to put them? How much does Joseph play this season? Let me know in the comment section down below. I want him to play. He, of course, came over in the Phil Kessel trade, 2017 first-round pick, and he played good last year when everyone was hurt. Literally everyone on the Penguins defenseman was hurt. We had to sign Yannick Weber. That's how bad it got. Last season for Joseph, in Wilkes-Barre, 23 games, a goal, 12 assists, 13 points. He was a -14 in Wilkes-Barre. However, in Pittsburgh, where he should be, 16 games, 1 goal, which was a nice one, 4 assists and 5 points. He was a +1. And then he was, moved back down into Wilkes-Barre. I don't see why he should be there. He'll burn up another year of his entry-level contract if he, use it. Put Pierre Olivier Joseph in the NHL. Now, as far as Poulin, Legare, and Broz, they are all forwards, mostly wingers. Some of them can play center. Poulin can play center. But for the most part, with the Penguins centers, who I think you guys know the name of, they will likely be wingers on this team, and that's exactly what the Penguins need. It's good, skilled wingers. Is Jason Zucker going to wake up? If he doesn't, do you bring in a guy like these youngsters to kind of, try and get things going here? Now, we'll go over Tristan Broz here first because he was just drafted this past season. He's only 18 years old. He's not going to make it to the NHL this year unless, a miracle happens and he looks amazing. Despite that, he's only 18. His development will take a while. He was drafted in the second round by the Penguins this year. And kind of the hierarchy of how Penguins prospects go is that I think Tristan Broz could be the next Samuel Poulin and Nathan Legare, who could be the next Brian Rust or Jake Gensel, and hopefully that'll happen. So Broz, I think he has a couple of years of development left. He will play at the University of Minnesota, so get some good college hockey under his belt before he comes to Wilkes-Barre and hopefully the Penguins. Now, Poulin and Legare. I've mentioned multiple times in this video already that the Penguins don't have good prospects, but these two are, the ones to get excited about for the Penguins. If there is any players to get excited about in the prospects for the Penguins, it is these two, Poulin and Legare. Poulin, 2019 draft pick, first rounder. Legare, 2019 draft pick, third rounder. They're good friends in real life and off the ice, and they also recently this past season played on the same team. Val d'Or was going all in to try and win the Memorial Cup, and they added at the deadline, and they brought in Samuel Poulin and Nathan Legare and put them on the same team. They did great together. They made a pretty deep run, but they didn't end up winning. However, they put up some good numbers. Samuel Poulin in the regular season combined between his two teams had 24 games, 11 goals, 20 assists, 31 points, and in the playoffs, 15 games played, 11 goals, 8 assists, 19 points. 19 points in 15 playoff games is amazing. And then for Legare, 33 games played in the regular season split between his two teams, 16 goals, 22 assists, 38 points. And in the playoffs for Val d'Or, 15 games played, 14 goals in 15 games, on top of 4 assists and 18 points in the playoffs alone. So the next Jake Gensel, maybe. He's a third-round draft pick. The Penguins have been so good at third-round draft picks coming out of nowhere. Brian Rust, Jake Gensel, Matt Murray, Chris Letang. So is Legare going to be better than Poulin? I don't care. I want to see them both in the NHL make their debut this season. I don't think they will be regulars in the lineup, but I have this marker in my hand because I'm going to predict, I'm going to put a dot next to players that I think we will see in the NHL this season. I already said Joseph will be there. Broz will take too long to develop. Poulin and Legare, I think we will see this season. I don't know if they'll be regulars. I hope they can be because the Penguins need good young players and cheap contracts. You never know, though, and I'm excited for them. Get excited about these two players. That's really the gist of this video. You can turn off this video now because a lot of these other players are kind of just like, maybe. Poulin and Legare, that's a different story. So let's move over to Tier 4. And as I mentioned, Drew O'Connor has made it to the NHL. I'll put a dot next to him. I really think Drew O'Connor is going to be the next Zach Aston-Reese at best, Sam Lafferty at worst. He didn't really show me much last year. He got in a lot of games because the Penguins were hurt, and he had 1 assist. That came in 10 NHL games, even in Wilkes-Barre, 7 goals, 12 assists, 19 points in 20 games. I think he'll be a graduate, is what I'm saying, but not in the aspect that he'll be a great prospect for the Penguins. And it's fine. It's completely fine. He was a free agent signing out of college. good for him making it to the NHL after being undrafted, and you need those depth guys on any team. Now we get into an interesting one. Filip Hallander is back on this board. I haven't done these in years prior outside of last year, but if I were to have done this a couple years ago, he would have been on this board. And then last year he wouldn't have been, and now he's back. Why is that? Well, because the Penguins traded him in the Kasper Kapanen trade to the Toronto Maple Leafs. He spent 1 year or 2 years there. 1 year in Toronto, and he was just traded back to the Penguins in the Jared McCann trade, which we will not talk about because I'm very upset about it still. And McCann is on Seattle Kraken with Brandon Tanev, still two of my favorite players there. Anyways, Filip Hallander is a good prospect, though. Regardless how you feel about the McCann trade, this is a good player, and he maybe could be the next Teddy Bluger, maybe an international forward that is, kind of underlooked. A later draft pick, has spent a lot of time in the minors, developed really well, played overseas with men. He's not playing in like the QMJHL or the CHL where he's playing against boys. He's playing against men. And in that last year, he 51 games played over in the Swedish Elite League. 13 goals, 11 assists, 24 points. Nothing mind-blowing, but that's kind of, you have to take statistics differently when you look at it from like the CHL. Like a guy will score like 120 points. There's no way that he's going to do it in the NHL unless he's, a tier 1 player. You kind of look at statistics differently when it's, international play, when it's the KHL, when it's the SHL, when it's the, Finnish Elite League, because that shows you possibly what they could do over an 82 game schedule from the NHL. And, 24 points over 51 games, that's pretty decent for a good young forward. Hallander is 21. He's still young. He was a second round pick by the Penguins in 2018. And, of course, the trades happened. I think he could be a good forward for the Penguins. And do not be surprised if he sneaks into the lineup this year. I think, with injuries, he could be the Penguins' fourth-line center, maybe even without injuries. Right now, Radim Zohorna is the Penguins' fourth-line center. Right now, because Malkin will be out to start the season, and then, he'll be back, and then Bluger will go back in that spot. But you never know, and that's why I'm putting a dot next to Filip Hallander's name. Now, this I'll try and make these next three names as quick as possible because they can all be grouped into the good young goaltender trio. And that is Filip Lindberg, Joel Blomqvist, and Calle Clang. All goaltenders, all young. Goaltenders are infamously one of the positions that takes the longest to develop. So we likely will not see Calle Clang or Joel Blomqvist in net for the Penguins. Maybe not even Filip Lindberg. However, I will mention him later. As for Blomqvist and Clang, Clang plays in the Swedish Elite League, Blomqvist in the Finnish Elite League. They're both 19 years of age. We're not going to see them this year. But the Penguins, despite not having a good prospect pool, their goaltending prospect pool is pretty good. And in their NHL prospect pool, it's not a pool, but their NHL team, arguably the weakest position is goaltending. So I don't know. And goaltending is obviously a position where if you have two injuries, then you have two completely new guys playing in there. So you never know, but I don't think we'll see Clang or Blomqvist. However, I think we may see Filip Lindberg. Filip Lindberg was signed on free agency day, and everyone was like, who the hell is this? Goaltender coming out of UMass for the Penguins. He wasn't undrafted. He was actually drafted in the 7th round by the Minnesota Wild. They failed to sign him. He's 22 years old, and he's likely going to be the next third goaltender for the Penguins, and he's listed as the Penguins' third goaltender right now. Like on Elite Prospects, it says that he's in the NHL, cap friendly as well, listed as the Penguins' third goaltender on the depth chart. And with one injury, we could easily see Filip Lindberg. Now, that's a good thing in my opinion because you never know with young goaltenders. We saw it with Matt Murray and even with Tristan Jarry before he, turned to shit. At UMass, which is a very good, school, 15 games played, 1.24 save percent or goals against average, and a 949 save percentage, a record of 10-1-4. Obviously has, a great team in front of him, but still, I really like this kid, and he's an NCAA champion, and he also has a World Junior Championship gold medal to his name already. Surprised this guy was a 7th round pick and was unsigned by the Wild, so maybe could be something for the Penguins. Now, in a tier 5, this is where I'm gonna, kind of just go over guys really quickly because you never know. And again, if I haven't said it already in this video, the Pittsburgh Penguins are unanimously one team that can just find guys out of nowhere. There's the meme, Buzz Flisbit and Mark Donk. You never know. Okay, Jake Gensel came out of nowhere. Brian Rust even came out of nowhere. You know, you never know. Sam Lafferty. You remember when the Penguins signed Stefan Nasic off of waivers? He came in and he scored and then he left. Those type of guys. So maybe someone hiding in here could be that for the Penguins. But real quick, Jonathan Gruden, acquired in the Matt Murray trade, was a 4th-round pick by the Ottawa Senators. He played in Wilkes-Barre last season. He played 32 games, 14 points, 6 goals, 8 assists. Maybe an emergency call up there. I really don't see much from Gruden. Jordy Bellerive. This is an interesting name because he reminds me a lot of Teddy Bluger in the fact that he's entering his 5th season in Wilkes-Barre. He was an undrafted player, completely, free agent signing. Bluger spent a lot of years in Wilkes-Barre before he finally got the call up, and look what he did in the NHL. Do we see that out of Bellerive? I don't know, but he's, kind of a little bit of an above-average prospect. Out of these names in Tier 5, I think he's the best prospect here. Last season, in 29 games played, had 18 points, 10 goals, 8 assists with Wilkes-Barre. That's a career high in points per game for him. Jean Drozg, another international player, played overseas. He's a Slovenian depth forward. Last season with Wilkes-Barre, 7 points in 30 games. I really don't see it out of him, given the fact that, he was drafted in 2017 as a 5th rounder. He'll probably finish his career in Wilkes-Barre, and I really don't see him becoming an NHL player anymore, as his development is kind of just starting to go out the window. Isaac Belliveau is a recent draft pick, a 2021 draft pick, 5th rounder. He's only 18 years old. We will not see him unless, a miracle happens. Played with Gatineau in the QMJHL last season, 12 points in 21 games, 0 points in the 1 point in the playoffs in 4 games. He'll take some time as well, but good to have some defensemen on here because the last defenseman we talked about was Pierre Olivier Joseph, and hopefully he can make it to the NHL. So if you get rid of him, this is just a forwards and goaltending spectacle. Judd Caufield, another recent draft pick, 2019 5th rounder. He's a very skilled forward from the University of North Dakota. He's entering his 3rd year in North Dakota in the NCAA. He'll likely play a full 4 years there and then head off to Wilkes-Barre. He's only 20 years old. Last season, 11 points in 26 games. And he's also a former NCAA runner-up, so don't expect to see Caufield either. Kasper Bjornqvist. This is an interesting one. He's been on the Penguins, prospect list for a long time now because he was drafted in 2016, which, is 5, almost 6 years ago now. He's 24, which is getting up there, and he was a 2nd-round pick. He has dealt with some injuries, but last season, in Wilkes-Barre, he only played 5 games and had 1 goal. He played overseas in Finland, though. 44 games played at 26 points in the playoffs. 2 games played, 0 points. He's a World Junior Championship gold medalist, and he's playing in the Finnish Liga, so he's got that going for him. But I really think his development is running out. So, just predicting things here. As I predicted that these guys could potentially come to the NHL, I'm going to predict that Jean Drozg and Kasper Bjornqvist will be off this list by next year. And then the last name on our list, Cam Lee, a very simple name, a 24-year-old defenseman. He actually, despite being the last name that I'm going to be talking about today, I could see him sneaking into the NHL because, as I mentioned before, the Penguins are very short in terms of defensemen, defensive prospects. They got Pierre Olivier Joseph, and then that's it. That's it. So I could see him being like the next Zach Trotman, a guy that, plays primarily in Wilkes-Barre, but is the first call up when there is a defensive injury and Chad Ruedel can't play that night for some reason. I could definitely, see him sneaking in there. Last season in Wilkes-Barre, he had 15 points in 31 games played. He was an even plus-minus as well. He could sneak into the NHL. I don't know. He almost made the NHL last season when the Penguins had those defensive injuries and they signed Yannick Weber and Pierre Olivier Joseph came in the NHL. But we will wait and see. This is a hypothetical video, so, we'll come back to this in a year and we'll see how I did. Like, comment, subscribe. thank you all for watching. Who do you think will make it in the NHL in terms of the Pittsburgh Penguins prospect pyramid? I have Poulin, Legare, Joseph, O'Connor, Hallander, Lindberg, and Lee all potentially making a cameo in the NHL next season.